Steven Bartlett, The Diary of a CEO. So this is in the very first law, which is fill your 5 buckets in the right order. If you've heard of Steven, he's talked about this quite a bit. And the buckets are in the order of what you know, what you can do, who you know, what you have, and then what they think of you. And it gets translated into like knowledge, skill, network, resources, and reputation. That visual, that takeaway, that philosophy of the law, I went, yep, makes sense. I can apply it. I had conversations after reading this book around that sort of. Welcome back, Mere Mortalites, to another edition of the Mere Mortals book reviews, and I've got The Diary of a CEO by Steven Bartlett. If you at all listen to podcasts, you've probably come across the podcast by the same name, The Diary of a CEO. Steven Bartlett is a pretty prolific individual. I believe right now the main group, which is, I think it's Flight Fund or Flight Story, it's a whole collective of companies that Steven himself looks after. There's a podcast that he's been doing for quite a long time that has amassed, I believe it's over 10 million subscribers on YouTube at this stage. And he produced this particular book quite recently, 2023, albeit it's something that I just read basically this year. So it is a recent book under the eyes of our other favorite Karen Down. This is way too recent. However, I do like Steven's content. I like his message. And I thought, just coming off the back of reading 48 Laws of Power, this is the 33 Laws of Business and Life. So look, I was primed with a previous book that is already seen as legendary or a quite classic in this particular avenue or business / self-help. So leaning in that position. The book is, if you're reading it, 33 Laws of Business and Life, you cannot be more pointed as to what this book is. When you open it, it is, as the cover illustrates, it very much is just the 33 laws that Steven himself, through the use of stories from his life, from business, from a lot of examples that he puts in conversations that he's had from the podcast, he transplants that over into this book. So he introduces himself a little bit around, who he is, what have you done. The actual, I guess, probably the key to talk about, as I usually do with some of these, is that the chapters are broken down by the laws. I'll give you an example here of a little bit of that breakdown of what it looks like. I will hold it up to the camera if you can see in the actual video. But the text is large. It's a book that I was able to get through fairly quickly. But Law 2, big, nice letters. To master it, you must create an obligation to teach it. There's a story, there's an explanation with a little bit of quotes that come out behind that. There's a reasoning about being skin in the game. So it's broken down really nicely and then gets into practically how you might apply that. And he always sort of ties all of these out with a particular quote. So for this one is, you don't become a master because you're able to retain knowledge. You become a master when you're able to release it. So every law / chapter is sort of bounded in that way. Usage of quotes, leveraging stories, leveraging some of his own knowledge, understanding of the individuals who he connects with. It is very straightforward in that regard. I must jump in and talk about the 33rd law, however. This is my only giant takeaway, because I was going through the book, and I'll talk about some of the content as well in a moment. I'm going, yeah, the structure's quite nice, awesome. I'm reading through, and then I get to Law 33. And so what happens at Law 33, everybody? Can you guess what a marketing and salesperson might do at Law 33? I'm going to hold it up. It's called Learning Never Ends. And if you're not looking at the video right now, it is, in fact, a QR code to the 33rd law. And that takes you off to, obviously, a place where you can register, subscribe, put your email, and, he gets in the back end a little bit extra, more info and juicy details that he can potentially share out and get details. But I went, it's actually not a 33rd law. I don't know if it's learning that never ends, because that's literally where the book finishes off. There's nothing else after that, just references and other things. So I kind of went, ooh, I feel a little bit cut. Where's my 33rd law? Learning never ends. That takes you to, following him and his subscription and the emails that he sends out. And while I would say I'm a fan of Steven and will consume a lot of the stuff that he produces, I felt like 1/33 of this book's actually not within this book. So it's a little sneaky target. I can already hear the sounds of Karen, screaming, ads, damn this book, new thing. anyways, I didn't find it that difficult of a thing to see in there, but it was a little bit annoying, which of course is why I'm calling it out. The content. So 33 Laws of Business and Life from Steven Bartlett. 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene was detailed, meticulous to the level of not just stories, but the transposing about why it's good, why it's bad. Now, that has very different, relative positioning because it's more around the power. This is a little bit gentler in that it's business and life. And Stephen does not attempt to make it as meticulous, I would think, as Robert would have in his particular book. Again, very different books. So one of the call-outs is don't go into this book expecting it to be something along those lines. It is a more practical, maybe another way to say it, a more tactical book. The effective philosophy bounded within is quickly grasped, is probably another way that I would say it. And you can take away from that then actions. So a lot of the items here, in fact, let me bring up the images because there's quite a few images on this book as well. It was right at the beginning where I was able to, so this is in the very first law, which is fill your 5 buckets in the right order. If you've heard of Stephen, he's talked about this quite a bit. And the buckets are in the order of what you know, what you can do, who you know, what you have, and then what they think of you. And it gets transposed into like knowledge, skill, network, resources, and reputation. That visual, that takeaway, that philosophy of the law, I went, yep, makes sense. I can apply it. I had conversations after reading this book around that sort of bucket structure or the idea that came around it. So it was practical. It was good. It was good for that regard. Again, when you read a book, and it kind of depends how you want to take away. Do you sometimes want to take away some learnings? You want to just enjoy it a bit as a fiction book or just something to unwind? For me, reading these type of books, I want to take away learnings, things that I can apply practically, effective philosophies. And that was just one example of effective philosophies that sit within there. I would have said of the 33 laws, 15-ish I'd probably go with, where effective philosophies that I can go and do something with them. The other 15, 16, 17 were informational. They were understanding. There were maybe conceptual ideas or frameworks that he applies in business and in life that will support him and help him. So, you as a listener going through, what are you going to take away from it? Am I recommending this particular book to you? Again, it's not a big book. Honestly, I would recommend it. Especially if you're some sort of business dealings, if you follow Steven Bartlett, you will take away a lot of learnings and a lot of knowledge that even he himself doesn't really talk about too much in his own podcasts and videos. So for that was really, really cool. There is a lot of respouting of stuff that happened in podcasts that he has already done. So if you are someone who has listened to the Diary of a CEO podcast quite religiously, you'll probably see that 10%, 15% of this book is just things that come out from that show. Now, I'm not saying that's entirely a bad thing, but it just is what it is. Don't come into this book expecting it to be the 48 Laws of Power. It isn't that, but it is a easy, practical read. That didn't take away much from a mind space to get into it, to read it, to absorb it. The quotes were, as you would find, just a general type of quotes. I at least wouldn't say it's a gigantically motivational book, but it was a really practical and effective philosophy book. 7 out of 10 from me. Some of the notes there around, this is not a book about business strategy changes like the seasons. It is a book about something much more permanent. And I think you'll be, even though there is that note, I will sort of finally say it's about 50% business and then the other one's 50% life. Yes, you can extrapolate some of the stuff to life, but the effective philosophy that really comes underneath is business, and he does pretty well with that. So I'm glad that he sort of put together this book. It was a joy to read. It didn't slow me down. And after the 48 Laws of Power, it was nice to read something a little bit lighter and easier to power through. So, Stephen, The Diary of a CEO, 33 Laws of Business and Life. That is a book review for today, Mere Mortalites. If you want to support us, do all the good things, comment, send a message, subscribe, send through any of the benefits or any of the Value for Value channels that we operate. So many things. But for now, we're going to leave it there. Mere Mortalites, be well wherever you are in the world. Wine out.